visits his mother in the hospital, then sees his ex-wife with triplets next door and is stunned, unable to move. Open at the exact moment Julian's world stops making sense. He stands outside a hospital room carrying a cup of herbal tea meant for his mother. A child's cheerful voice breaks the silence. "Mom, look, I finished mine too." Julian glances through the half-open doorway. A woman kneels beside 3 little girls, helping them arrange colored pencils across a hospital tray. The woman turns. It's Tessa, the woman he divorced 6 years ago. Neither of them speaks. The years between them disappear in one stunned glance. Before Julian can process what he's seeing, one of the girls walks toward the doorway. She smiles politely at him, before tilting her head, in the exact thoughtful way Julian has done his entire life whenever he's trying to remember someone. His grip tightens around the paper cup. His heartbeat refuses to settle. The child smiles again. "Hi." Julian somehow manages to answer. "Hi." Tessa's expression changes the instant she notices where his eyes have settled. Without saying another word, she gently guides the girls back inside. Julian doesn't move. One impossible question begins forming inside his mind, and before the audience receives a single answer, cut back to where the story truly began. Welcome back to Mr. Williams' Storytime. If you enjoy heartfelt stories filled with unforgettable characters, unexpected turns, and meaningful endings, you're in the right place. Before we continue, take a second to subscribe, leave a like, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps this channel grow and allows me to bring you more stories like this every week. Now, let's go back to the morning that changed Julian Cross's life forever. Transition immediately into the beginning, without repeating information from the cold open. Introduce Julian through action rather than lengthy description. Show him confidently leading an early morning executive meeting where every decision he makes reflects years of discipline and experience. His employees respect him. Investors trust him. People assume he has everything. The meeting ends with congratulations over another successful business acquisition. Someone jokes, "Julian, do you ever take a vacation?" He smiles politely. "Maybe next year." Everyone laughs. He doesn't. After the room empties, reveal the quieter side of his life. He eats breakfast alone in his office. A framed family photograph sits in a desk drawer instead of on display. He opens it for only a moment before putting it away again. The audience understands something important without needing an explanation. Julian has mastered success. He has never recovered from loss. Just as Julian prepares for another meeting, his phone rings. The caller ID shows St. Mary's Hospital. His expression changes instantly. He answers. A calm nurse explains that his mother was admitted during the night after experiencing chest pains. She is stable. She keeps asking for him. Julian doesn't hesitate. He cancels every meeting. His assistant offers to reschedule investors. Julian simply replies, "Nothing today matters more than my mother." Within minutes, he leaves the office. Instead of focusing on traffic or long descriptions, let the drive reveal his thoughts. He remembers how his mother worked 2 jobs after his father died, how she never complained, how she celebrated every small success long before anyone else believed in him. He quietly realizes how long it has been since they shared an ordinary afternoon together. Julian arrives at the hospital. His mother smiles the moment she sees him. The reunion feels warm rather than dramatic. She immediately asks, "Have you eaten today?" Julian laughs. "You end up in the hospital and you're still worried about me?" She smiles. Mothers don't retire. Their conversation moves naturally from health to life. She notices the exhaustion behind his smile. She gently asks, "When was the last time you spent a day doing something that made you happy?" Julian avoids answering. She already knows why. Without mentioning Tessa immediately, she reminds him that success is easier to measure than happiness. After a thoughtful pause, she quietly says, "Some people spend years chasing bigger dreams and don't notice they've left the best ones waiting behind." Julian lowers his eyes. He doesn't argue. The audience begins to understand that the greatest thing he lost wasn't money, it was someone he loved. Before leaving the room, Julian offers to bring his mother a cup of herbal tea from the hospital cafe. She thanks him with a smile. On his way back, he passes different hospital departments where ordinary families share everyday moments. Siblings laughing together over a card game, grandparents celebrating good news, a father helping his young son finish homework while waiting for a doctor. These brief moments quietly emphasize what Julian's own life has been missing. As he turns the final corner toward his mother's room, a familiar laugh reaches him. He stops immediately. He knows that laugh. Slowly, he looks toward the open doorway. Inside stands Tessa. She isn't alone. Time seems to stand still. Tessa notices him almost immediately. Her smile fades into quiet surprise. Neither of them knows who should speak first. Julian finally breaks the silence. "Tessa," she answers softly. "Julian." No accusations, no anger, only two people unexpectedly facing the life they left behind. The years between them feel both distant and incredibly close. As they exchange a few careful words, the three little girls continue coloring nearby. Julian notices details he can't ignore. One hums while concentrating exactly as he used to. Another absent-mindedly taps her pencil against the table in the same rhythm he has followed since childhood. The youngest gives a crooked smile that reminds him of old family photographs. None of those things prove anything, yet together they create a question he never imagined asking. Tessa notices his growing curiosity. For the first time since seeing him, uncertainty crosses her face. She gently encourages the girls to gather their things. One of the girls pauses before leaving. She smiles at Julian. "Nice meeting you." He smiles back automatically. "You too." She tilts her head one last time. The gesture lands like a punch he never saw coming. Tessa quietly places a hand on the little girl's shoulder before leading all three children back into the room. The door closes. Julian remains standing in the hallway, unable to move. Only one thought refuses to leave him. Could those children somehow be mine? If you're already trying to solve this mystery, let me know your first impression in the comments. Do you think Julian is jumping to conclusions? Or has fate just placed him in front of the biggest truth of his life? And if you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what happens in the next chapter. Julian remains in the hallway long after Tessa closes the hospital room door. The cup of herbal tea in his hand has gone cold, but he barely notices. His mind keeps returning to the three little girls. Not because they were triplets, not because they were beautiful, because they felt strangely familiar. He tells himself he's being unreasonable. Coincidences happen every day. Yet every time he closes his eyes, he sees the youngest girl's smile and the oldest one's thoughtful head tilt. He quietly shakes himself out of it. You're letting your imagination run too far. Still, the question refuses to disappear. Julian finally returns to his mother's room. Beatrice notices something is different immediately. That tea took longer than expected. Julian forces a small smile. "I ran into someone." She studies his face. "Someone important?" After a long pause, he answers, "Tessa." Beatrice slowly sits a little straighter. Beatrice expected to hear that name again. Julian explains that Tessa is across the hall with three little girls. His mother listens without interrupting. When he finishes, she gently asks, "Did she seem happy?" The question surprises him. He expected curiosity. Instead, his mother simply wanted to know whether someone she once loved as family had found peace. Julian quietly admits what has been bothering him. The girls appear to be around 5 years old. The timeline feels painfully close. Beatrice reaches over and takes his hand. "Don't let your questions become facts before you know the truth." Julian nods. He knows she's right. He has spent his career making decisions based on evidence. Yet today, his heart keeps speaking louder than his experience. His mother encourages him to talk to Tessa with kindness instead of assumptions. Whatever the truth may be, it deserves patience. After leaving his mother's room again, Julian walks toward a quiet seating area overlooking the hospital courtyard. Children play in a small family garden below while relatives wait nearby. Watching them reminds him of everything he postponed while building his business. He finally makes a decision. Running away will only create more unanswered questions. If fate has brought Tessa back into his life after 6 years, he owes both of them one honest conversation. He takes a deep breath and walks back toward her room. Julian knocks gently. Tessa already knows who it is before opening the door. She asks the girls if they'd like to visit their grandfather's room for a few minutes. The children happily agree. Once they leave, silence fills the room. Neither knows where to begin. Finally, Julian smiles awkwardly.
"This isn't how I imagined seeing you again."
Tessa lets out a quiet laugh. Neither did I. The tension eases just enough for real conversation to begin. Instead of arguing about the past, they slowly catch up. Julian asks about her father. She explains his surgery went well. Tessa asks about Beatrice. Julian smiles. She's already telling nurses what they should be doing. Tessa laughs. That sounds exactly like her. For a brief moment, it almost feels like no time has passed. Then reality quietly returns. Julian notices there is no wedding ring on Tessa's hand. Tessa notices he never remarried. Neither comments on it. The silence says enough. Julian hesitates before speaking again. "Can I ask you something?" Tessa already knows what is coming. She simply nods. Julian looks toward the hallway where the girls disappeared. "How old are they?" She answers softly. "They turned 5 this spring." His heart sinks. The dates match more closely than he hoped. Neither of them speaks for several long seconds. Julian looks directly at Tessa. His voice is calm but uncertain. Tessa. Yes? Is there something about those girls that I should know? She closes her eyes for a moment, not because she wants to lie, because she has carried the truth alone for years. When she opens her eyes again, they are filled with emotion. She quietly says, "There is," but she cannot bring herself to continue. Before another word can be spoken, the three girls come running back into the room, laughing over a small toy they found in their grandfather's room. The moment disappears. Julian watches them carefully. One little girl smiles up at him. Another waves happily. The oldest studies him with innocent curiosity before asking, "Mom, is he someone we know?" Tessa looks at Julian. Julian looks at Tessa. Neither answers. The truth has never felt closer. But is either of them ready to say it out loud? If this chapter made you wonder what you would do in Julian's place, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you're enjoying the journey, remember to subscribe so you can continue the story with us in the next chapter. After the girls leave with their grandparents to grab a snack from the hospital cafe, the room becomes quiet again. Neither Julian nor Tessa rushes to fill the silence. Julian gently sets the untouched cup of tea on the windowsill. "I don't want to make today harder for you." Tessa gives a faint smile. "I don't think today could have surprised me any more than it already has." He nods. "Fair enough." Another quiet pause follows. This time it isn't uncomfortable. It's the silence of two people trying to find the right place to begin after carrying years of unanswered questions. Julian finally says, "I've replayed our last conversation more times than I can count." Tessa lowers her eyes. "So have I." Neither of them tries to defend the past. Neither pretends it didn't hurt. For the first time in years, they're simply being honest. Julian quietly admits that work slowly became his entire identity. At first he believed every late night was temporary, every missed dinner, every canceled weekend, every promise to make it up later. He genuinely believed he was building a better future for both of them. Tessa listens before answering. "I never wanted you to stop chasing your dreams." Julian looks at her. "Then what did you want?" She smiles sadly. "I wanted to be part of them." Her words settle heavily between them. She explains that she never measured love by expensive gifts or beautiful homes. She measured it by ordinary moments. Breakfast together, a walk after dinner, watching old movies on a Sunday afternoon. Julian realizes those simple moments slowly disappeared without either of them noticing. "We weren't fighting all the time. No, we were just missing each other." Tessa nods, even when we were living under the same roof. The conversation shifts naturally toward happier memories. Julian laughs while remembering the tiny apartment they rented after getting married. "We barely had enough room for 2 chairs. Tessa laughs too. One of them always squeaked. "You kept saying we'd replace it." "We never did." They both smile. For a few minutes they remember learning to cook together, getting lost during road trips, arguing over paint colors for their first home, and celebrating promotions with takeout because they couldn't afford expensive restaurants. Those memories remind both of them of something important. Their marriage didn't begin with problems. It began with friendship. Somewhere along the way, life became louder than their conversations. Julian's expression grows serious again. He knows avoiding the subject won't make it disappear. Carefully, he asks, "Tessa, why did you look frightened when I saw the girls?" She doesn't answer immediately. Instead, she walks toward the window. After a long moment, she quietly says, "Because I knew what you might notice." Julian waits. She turns back toward him. "I've thought about this conversation for years. Then tell me. I'm trying." Her voice is steady, but carrying the weight of 6 silent years. Julian speaks softly. "When I looked at them," he hesitates, "they reminded me of my family." Tessa closes her eyes briefly, not because she disagrees, because she already knows. Julian continues, "I told myself I was imagining things." Still no answer. "Tell me I'm wrong." She slowly shakes her head. Not yes, not no, just enough to leave him suspended between hope and fear. The uncertainty becomes harder to bear than any answer could have been. Before Julian can ask another question, Tessa begins speaking. "There wasn't a single day I forgot you." He looks surprised. She continues, "You probably think I moved on easily. I never believed that." "Good." She takes a slow breath. "Because I didn't." She explains that after the divorce she spent months convincing herself that ending the marriage had been the only choice left. Not because she stopped loving Julian. Because she believed they wanted different futures. Julian quietly admits, "I thought exactly the same thing." They both smile sadly. Two people, both in love. both convinced the other wanted to leave. Tessa reveals that there was one day she almost came back. She drove to Julian's office. She sat in her car for nearly half an hour. She even walked into the lobby. Julian listens carefully. "Why didn't you come upstairs?" She looks down at her hands. "Because I heard something." Julian frowns. She explains that while waiting outside a conference room, she overheard him telling investors, "My future is my business now." She believed those words were about their marriage. Julian immediately recognizes the meeting. His face changes. "Tessa, what? I wasn't talking about us." She slowly looks up. "You weren't?" "No." He explains the conversation had been about abandoning an international investment that nearly destroyed one of his companies years earlier. Silence fills the room. Not angry silence, the heartbreaking silence of realizing how one misunderstanding can redirect two entire lives. Julian's voice becomes almost a whisper. "If you misunderstood me." "Yes." "Why didn't you ever call afterward?" Tessa gently answers, "Because I thought I'd already heard your answer." Julian lowers his head. Neither blames the other anymore. They simply recognize how fear quietly replaced communication. A gentle knock interrupts them. One of the nurses smiles from the doorway. "Your visitors are coming back." The sound of 3 cheerful little voices echoes down the hallway. Julian turns toward the door, then back to Tessa. His heart tells him the biggest answer is still waiting. Before the girls step inside, he asks one final question. "Tessa," she meets his eyes, "did you ever keep something from me because you believed I no longer wanted to know?" She doesn't answer. Instead, a single tear slips down her cheek. The girls rush happily into the room. The moment is gone. For now. If you've been following every clue, what do you think Tessa has been carrying all these years? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you're enjoying the story, subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter, where the truth finally begins to emerge. The girls leave the room once more after Tessa's father asks them to help him choose a magazine from the hospital gift shop. The door closes softly behind them. Julian and Tessa are alone again. Neither speaks immediately. This time, Julian doesn't want another misunderstanding to steal another 6 years. He walks a little closer. "Tessa, whatever you've been carrying all this time, please don't protect me from it anymore." She studies his face. For the first time since they met again, she sees something she hasn't seen in years. Not the confident businessman, not the man who always believed he could solve every problem, just Julian, the man she once loved. She quietly nods. "You deserve the truth." Tessa slowly sits down. Her hands remain folded tightly in her lap. She begins speaking without looking at him. 3 weeks after we signed the divorce papers, I wasn't feeling well. Julian listens without interrupting. At first I blamed stress. She gives a faint smile. Then I bought a pregnancy test. Julian's expression changes. His breathing slows. He doesn't speak. He simply waits. Tessa finally looks up. It was positive. The room becomes completely still. Julian stares at her. Not because he doesn't understand, because he understands perfectly. After several long moments, Julian finally finds his voice. "You were pregnant." She nods. "Yes." "When?" "After the divorce." He slowly sits down across from her. "Why didn't you tell me?" There is no anger in his voice, only confusion, only heartbreak. Tessa answers honestly. "I tried." Julian looks up immediately. "You did?" She nods again. She explains how she drove to his office, how she waited downstairs, how hearing one misunderstood sentence convinced her he had already closed that chapter of his life. "I couldn't walk through that door," Julian quietly whispers. "I wish you had." She smiles sadly. "I know." Julian slowly leans forward. His voice barely rises above a whisper. "I wasn't talking about you." In his eyes, not because he says it, because every expression on his face tells the truth. He explains the meeting she overheard, the failed business project, the investors, the conversation that had nothing to do with their marriage. Tessa closes her eyes. For years she believed those words had ended everything. Now she realizes they never had. 2 people loved each other. Neither stopped caring. Both simply believed the other had already let go. Julian quietly says, "We lost years because neither of us asked one more question." Neither argues, neither blames. The truth itself hurts enough. Julian slowly looks toward the hallway where children's laughter drifts back toward the room. His heart pounds harder than it ever has during any business negotiation. He already knows the answer. Still, he needs to hear it. He carefully asks, "The girls?" Tessa doesn't let him finish. She already knows. A tear slips down her cheek. She gently nods. Julian's voice trembles. "Are they?" She whispers, "Yes." One simple word, yet it changes everything. Julian lowers his head into his hands. For several seconds he cannot speak. The businessman who negotiated billion-dollar contracts now struggles to breathe through the emotion. Finally he whispers, "They're mine." Tessa gently corrects him. "They're ours." Those two words break something inside him. Years of regret, years of wondering what his life might have looked like if he had made different choices. He quietly asks, "They've never met me." "No, they don't know." Tessa smiles softly. "They know they have a father." Julian immediately looks up. "What did you tell them?" She answers without hesitation. "I told them their father was a good man." Julian shakes his head. "I wasn't." She gently reaches across the space between them. "You made mistakes." She pauses. "So did I." Julian cannot stop thinking about the birthdays he missed. The first words, the first steps, the bedtime stories, the school pictures, every memory he never had. He quietly says, "I'll never get those years back." Tessa doesn't disagree. Instead, she answers, "No." A short silence follows. Then she adds, "But you still have every year that's waiting." Julian looks at her. Hope begins replacing regret, not because the past disappeared, because the future still exists. Footsteps approach the room again. The girls are returning. Julian instinctively stands. His hands suddenly feel awkward. He has spoken before thousands of people without hesitation. Now he wonders how to introduce himself to three children who unknowingly belong to him. Tessa notices his uncertainty. She smiles gently. "You don't have to become their father today." He looks at her. "Then what should I be?" She answers warmly, "Just be Julian." For the first time that day, he smiles without forcing it. The door swings open. Three cheerful little girls hurry inside carrying small paper cups filled with pudding. The youngest immediately walks over to Julian. She holds out her spoon. "Want one?" Julian smiles. "Are you sure?" She nods confidently. Sharing makes everything taste better. His eyes begin to water. Without realizing it, his daughter has already shared something much bigger than dessert. She has shared a place in her heart. Julian accepts the spoon with trembling hands. He quietly wonders whether he'll ever be worthy of the family standing right in front of him. And as the girls gather around him with innocent curiosity, another question begins to form. How do you make up for 6 years that can never be lived again? Julian barely sleeps after leaving the hospital that evening. For years, his mornings followed the same routine: early meetings, business reports, and a schedule planned down to the minute. This morning is different. He ignores the stack of documents waiting on his dining table. Instead, he stops at a neighborhood bakery before sunrise. He studies the display case longer than he expects. The cashier smiles. "Big family breakfast?" Julian chuckles awkwardly. "I hope so." He chooses cinnamon rolls, blueberry muffins, chocolate milk for the girls, fresh fruit, coffee for Tessa, and herbal tea for his mother. As he carries everything toward the hospital, he realizes something. For the first time in years, he isn't thinking about work. He's thinking about whether 3 little girls will like breakfast. When Julian arrives, the girls are sitting together on one hospital bed, coloring another page from a giant activity book. The youngest notices him first. "Mom, Julian's here." Tessa looks up, surprised. "You came back." Julian lifts the bakery bags. "I wasn't sure what everyone liked, so I brought a little of everything." The girl's eyes brighten immediately. "For us?" Julian smiles. "If your mom says it's okay." Tessa laughs softly. "I don't think anyone's going to argue with breakfast." The girls happily help unpack the food. One reaches for fruit. Another immediately claims a blueberry muffin. The youngest carefully places a napkin beside Julian before sitting next to him. The simple gesture catches him off guard. Nobody says anything, yet somehow he already feels included. As breakfast continues, Julian begins discovering that although the girls look alike, each has a completely different personality. Nora enjoys asking questions. She wants to know everything. "What's your favorite color? Have you ever been camping? Do you like dogs?" Clara quietly observes before speaking. She notices details everyone else misses. When Julian accidentally places his coffee on the wrong side of the tray, she gently slides it closer. "You'll reach it easier there." Isla brings laughter wherever she goes. She proudly tells jokes that rarely make sense. Every time she finishes one, she laughs before anyone else has the chance. Soon everyone else is laughing too. Julian silently watches them. Each child is unique. Each one feels wonderfully real. Without realizing it, he begins memorizing everything about them. The morning passes naturally. No dramatic conversations, no difficult questions, just simple moments. Julian helps finish a puzzle. He loses a game of tic-tac-toe. He joins a coloring contest and proudly finishes last. The girls tease him. "You colored outside the lines." Julian raises both hands. "Clearly I need more practice." Even Tessa laughs. Watching him interact with the girls, she notices something she hasn't seen before. Julian isn't trying to impress them. He simply enjoys being with them. For years she wondered what kind of father he might have been. Now she's quietly seeing the answer. Later that afternoon, while the girls visit Beatrice with a nurse, Julian and Tessa step into the hallway. Julian breaks the silence. "Thank you." Tessa looks surprised. "For what?" "For raising them with so much love." She smiles gently. "They made it easy." Julian shakes his head. "No." "What do you mean?" "Children don't become kind by accident." Tessa doesn't know how to respond. After a moment, she quietly says, "There were days I wished they could have known you." Julian lowers his eyes. "I wish that too." Neither tries to erase the years they lost. Instead, they begin talking about the years still ahead. Julian doesn't make impossible promises. He doesn't ask for forgiveness. He doesn't ask to be called Dad. Instead, he quietly says, "I know I can't replace the time I missed." Tessa nods. He continues, "But if you'll let me, I'd like to earn my place in their lives." She studies him carefully, not looking for perfect words, looking for sincerity. Finally, she smiles. "One day at a time." Julian nods. "One day at a time." For both of them, it feels like the right beginning. When the girls return, they naturally include Julian in their conversation. Nora asks, "Will you visit again tomorrow?" Before Julian can answer, he glances toward Tessa. She gives a small nod. He smiles. "If you'll have me." Three voices answer together. "Yes." Clara asks, "Can we show you our drawings next time?" "I'd love that." Isla grins. "I'm going to beat you at tic-tac-toe again." Julian laughs. "You're already planning my defeat?" She proudly nods. "I'm very prepared." The room fills with warm laughter. Even Beatrice, listening from her bed across the hallway later that afternoon, smiles after hearing Julian recount every detail. She quietly thanks God for allowing her son to experience something money could never buy. Before leaving for the evening, Julian kneels beside the girls. "I'll see you tomorrow." As he stands, Nora gently catches his sleeve. He turns back. "Yes?" She studies his face carefully. "You smile differently now." Julian blinks. "Do I?" She nods. "Yesterday you smiled with your mouth." She points toward his eyes. "Today you're smiling here too." Julian cannot answer immediately. Children often notice truths adults overlook. Tessa hears every word. She quietly looks away, hiding her own emotions. Perhaps this reunion is already changing more lives than she imagined. That evening, Julian arrives home carrying the empty bakery box. His apartment feels larger than ever. Not because it's empty, because for the first time he knows exactly who is missing. He walks into his home office and looks at tomorrow's calendar. 8 meetings, 2 investor presentations, a dinner with potential business partners. He quietly closes the laptop, then reaches for his phone. His assistant answers almost immediately. "Good evening, Mr. Cross." Julian calmly says, "Cancel everything tomorrow morning." A surprised pause follows. "Everything?" Julian smiles to himself. "I have somewhere much more important to be." He hangs up and looks toward the family photograph he has kept hidden for years. Tomorrow, he won't be visiting the hospital as a successful businessman. He'll be returning as a father trying to learn how to become part of his daughter's lives. But one question still remains. Will the girls continue opening their hearts to him? Or will the past create new obstacles before their family can truly come together? If you're enjoying Julian's journey so far, let me know in the comments what has been your favorite moment between him and the girls. And if you haven't already, subscribe so you can continue this unforgettable story with us in the next chapter. The following week settles into a new routine. Every morning before answering a single business email, Julian stops by a small neighborhood cafe, not because the coffee is exceptional, because Clara likes their blueberry muffins. Nora always asks for fresh orange slices. Isla insists that chocolate milk tastes better with a striped paper straw. Without anyone asking him, Julian remembers every detail. When he walks into the hospital carrying breakfast, 3 excited voices fill the hallway. "Julian's here." The nurses smile. Even the receptionist begins expecting him around the same time each morning. He no longer feels like a visitor. Little by little, he begins feeling like someone the girls count on seeing. Julian's assistant notices the change before anyone else. For years, Julian answered calls within minutes. Now entire mornings pass before he even looks at his phone. During one meeting, an executive asks, "Should we postpone until next week?" Old Julian would have refused. Instead, he checks the time. The girls finish visiting hours in 45 minutes. He calmly replies, "Yes." The room falls silent. Nobody argues. They simply realize something important has changed. Julian still cares about business, it simply no longer comes first. The girls begin treating Julian as though he's always been part of their world. They no longer hesitate before asking for help. Clara struggles with a puzzle. "Julian, can you help me?" He kneels beside her. Instead of solving it himself, he gently asks, "What do you think goes here?" She studies the pieces carefully. A few seconds later, she smiles proudly after figuring it out herself. "I did it," Julian grins. "You certainly did." Across the room, Tessa notices something. Julian never tries to take over. He encourages, he listens, he lets the girls discover things on their own. She quietly smiles. That is exactly the kind of father they need. Later that afternoon, Beatrice watches Julian reading a picture book while all three girls crowd around him. Each child interrupts the story with questions. Isla wants every animal to have a funny voice. Clara keeps correcting Julian whenever he accidentally skips a sentence. Nora predicts what might happen on the next page. Julian happily goes along with all of it. Beatrice's eyes fill with tears. Tessa notices. "Are you all right?" Beatrice smiles warmly. "I'm better than all right." She looks toward Julian. "I've never seen my son smile this much." Tessa quietly replies, "Neither have I." The two women exchange a knowing glance, without saying another word. Both silently hope this new beginning lasts. That evening, Julian and Tessa sit together outside the hospital while the girls attend an art activity inside the children's ward. There is no pressure, no emotional speeches, just conversation. Julian asks about school. Tessa talks about dance recitals, science fairs, scraped knees, bedtime routines, and the girls' completely different personalities. Julian listens carefully. He isn't listening because he feels guilty. He's listening because he genuinely wants to know every missing chapter. After a while, he smiles. "You've been carrying 3 full-time jobs." Tessa laughs. "Some days it feels like 4. You've done an amazing job." She looks away for a moment. "Thank you." The compliment means more because it comes without apology or expectation. A few days later, Isla arrives carrying a handmade paper crown. She proudly places it on Julian's head. "Today's your turn to be king." Julian laughs. "King of what?" She answers without hesitation. "Snack time." Everyone bursts into laughter. Soon the girls invent small traditions. Friday becomes drawing day. Saturday becomes puzzle day. Whenever Julian visits, each child saves one story from her day to tell only him. He remembers every single one. Those small routines quietly begin filling 6 empty years with new memories. One afternoon, the girls race down the hallway after finishing a checkup with their grandfather. Nora reaches Julian first. She throws her arms around him. Without thinking, she blurts out, "Dad!" She immediately stops. Her eyes grow wide. The hallway becomes completely still. Nora quickly steps back. "I'm sorry." Julian gently kneels in front of her. "Why are you apologizing?" She looks embarrassed. "It just came out." Julian smiles with remarkable tenderness. "You never have to apologize for how you feel." He doesn't ask her to repeat it. He doesn't make the moment bigger than it needs to be. Instead, he simply hugs her. Across the hallway, Tessa quietly wipes away a tear. Not because Nora said one word, because Julian handled it with patience instead of excitement. He understood that trust cannot be rushed. It has to grow. Later that evening, after everyone has gone home, Julian remains sitting alone in his car. For the first time in days, worry begins creeping into his thoughts. He finally asks himself a question he has been avoiding. What happens when they're discharged? The hospital has become neutral ground, a place where everyone naturally gathers. Outside those walls, life becomes more complicated. Schedules, homes, schools, distance. He realizes he has no idea what comes next. For the first time since learning the truth, uncertainty returns. The next morning, Julian arrives carrying breakfast as usual. Before he reaches Tessa's room, he notices doctors speaking quietly with her parents. Moments later, Tessa steps into the hallway holding several sheets of paperwork. Julian immediately notices the expression on her face. "What's wrong?" She offers a small smile. "Nothing's wrong." She glances back toward the room. "They're sending Dad home tomorrow." Julian smiles at first, then he realizes what that also means. Soon, everyone will leave the hospital. The place that unexpectedly reunited them is about to disappear from their lives. As they stand together in the hallway, one question quietly settles between them. Can this new family continue growing once real life begins again? The morning Graham is discharged feels different from every other day. The nurses congratulate him. The girls happily help pack his small overnight bag, each insisting on carrying something important. Julian quietly wheels Graham toward the hospital entrance. Before they reach the parking area, Graham gently places a hand on Julian's shoulder. "Mind walking with me for a minute?" Julian nods. The two men slow their pace while the rest of the family walks ahead. After a thoughtful silence, Graham smiles. "You know, I used to be angry with you." Julian doesn't look surprised. "You had every reason." Graham shakes his head. "Not anymore." Julian looks at him. "Why?" Graham smiles warmly. "Because I've been watching how you look at those girls." Another pause. "No one has to teach a man how to love his children." Those words stay with Julian long after they reach the parking lot. A few days later, Tessa invites Julian to visit their home for the first time. Not as a guest, as someone the girls have been asking about every single day. When Julian arrives, he doesn't bring expensive gifts. Instead, he carries a small box filled with craft supplies, coloring books, and birdhouse kits he found at a neighborhood hobby shop. The girls rush to greet him before he even reaches the front porch. "You came," Julian laughs. "I said I would." Inside the house, everything feels warm and lived in. Family photos line the hallway. School drawings cover one section of the refrigerator. Backpacks sit neatly beside the front door. Nothing feels luxurious. Everything feels loved. Julian quietly realizes something. This house has given his daughters something no amount of money could ever purchase. A true sense of home. Instead of planning an elaborate day, everyone simply enjoys ordinary moments together. Julian helps assemble one of the birdhouses with Clara. Nora insists on teaching him a card game. Isla declares herself the official snack inspector and proudly approves every cookie on the table. The afternoon passes naturally. Nobody tries too hard. Nobody pretends the past never happened. Tessa watches from the kitchen while preparing lunch. Her mother quietly joins her. Sylvia smiles. "They're comfortable with him." Tessa nods. "They are," Sylvia gently asks. "And you?" Tessa looks toward the backyard where Julian laughs after accidentally losing another card game. A soft smile appears. "I'm getting there." Later that evening, after the girls begin a movie in the living room, Julian and Tessa step onto the back porch. The evening is peaceful. No phones, no interruptions. Julian finally says what has been sitting on his heart. "I've spent years wondering where I failed." Tessa quietly answers. "It wasn't just you." He looks at her. She continues. "I kept pretending everything was fine until I couldn't anymore." Julian nods slowly. "I kept believing I'd have more time." She smiles sadly. "We were both waiting." "For what?" "For the other person to notice." Neither of them raises their voice. Neither argues. For the first time since their marriage ended, they stop defending themselves and simply acknowledge the truth. The movie ends earlier than expected. The girls wander into the kitchen searching for dessert. Nora pauses after seeing Julian and Tessa smiling together. She quietly whispers to Clara, "They're laughing again." Clara smiles. "I like it." Isla walks straight up to both of them. She takes Julian's hand, then Tessa's. Without saying anything, she places both hands together. Before either adult can react, she happily runs back toward the living room. Julian and Tessa exchange an amused look. Neither comments on it. Yet both understand the silent message. Children often hope for things long before adults are brave enough to admit they want them too. As Julian prepares to leave that evening, Tessa walks him to his car. He turns toward her. "Can I tell you something?" She nods. "Of course." He takes a slow breath. "Years ago, I promised I'd give you the perfect life." She smiles faintly. "I remember." He gently shakes his head. "I was chasing the wrong definition." She waits. "Now I just want to be present." Those words mean more than any expensive promise ever could. Tessa quietly says, "That's all I ever wanted." Driving home, Julian reflects on everything that has changed over the past 2 weeks. His company continues operating smoothly. Meetings continue without him. Projects move forward. For years, he believed everything depended on his constant presence. Now he's beginning to realize something unexpected. The business doesn't need every hour of his life. His family does. For the first time, a thought he once considered impossible begins forming. Maybe success doesn't require sacrificing the people waiting at home. Maybe he's finally free to choose differently. The next afternoon, while helping Nora finish a school project, she casually asks, "Julian?" He looks up. "Yes?" She carefully chooses her words. "Are you going to disappear again?" The room becomes very quiet. Tessa stops what she's doing. Clara and Isla look toward him. Julian immediately understands why she asked. She's not questioning his love. She's protecting her heart. He kneels beside her. Looking directly into her eyes, he gently says, "The only way I'll ever leave is if you ask me to." Nora studies him for several seconds. Then she smiles. "Good." She hugs him tightly. The answer seems to satisfy her completely. But Julian quietly makes a promise to himself. He will spend the rest of his life making sure she never has to ask that question again. Later that night, Julian sits alone in his office. He opens a folder labeled Executive Transition Plan. For months it had been waiting untouched. Now he carefully reads every page. He reaches the final document, a resignation letter he drafted years ago but never submitted. His phone buzzes. A photo message arrives from Tessa. The girls are standing in the backyard beside the unfinished birdhouse. Each is smiling. The caption simply reads, "They're already asking what time you'll be here tomorrow." Julian looks from the photograph to the resignation letter resting on his desk. One represents everything he spent years building. The other represents everything he almost lost. Only one can become the center of his future. What choice will Julian make when he realizes he can't keep living the way he always has? The following Monday begins differently from every other Monday of Julian's career. Instead of reviewing financial reports before sunrise, he walks into the executive conference room carrying only a notebook. His leadership team immediately notices something unusual. There are no presentation slides, no quarterly forecasts, no acquisition proposals. Julian smiles calmly. Today isn't about numbers. The room grows quiet. He thanks every executive for helping build the company into something they are all proud of. Then he says something no one expected. "I've spent years believing this company couldn't function without me." A few people exchange uncertain glances. Julian continues, "I've finally realized I was wrong." He explains that true leadership means preparing others to succeed without depending on one person forever. Several executives begin smiling, not because they're losing their CEO, because they're watching him become the man he was always meant to be. After the meeting, Julian's closest business partner catches up with him in the hallway. "You're really stepping back?" Julian nods. "Yes. People spend their whole lives trying to reach your position." Julian smiles. "I know." His friend studies him carefully. "So why walk away now?" Julian thinks for a moment before answering. "Because I finally found something I don't want to miss." His friend follows his gaze toward the family photo now resting openly on Julian's desk instead of hidden inside a drawer. Nothing more needs to be said. Over the next several weeks, Julian settles naturally into the rhythm of family life. Instead of planning expensive outings, he enjoys simple routines. Walking the girls to school, helping with homework around the dining room table, cheering from the sidelines during Clara's soccer practice, watching Nora proudly perform during a school music recital, listening patiently while Isla explains why every stuffed animal deserves its own bedtime story. The girls stop asking, "Are you coming tomorrow?" Now they simply ask, "What are we doing tomorrow?" The difference means everything. Julian is no longer someone who visits. He's someone they expect. One Saturday afternoon, Tessa watches Julian repairing a loose step on the back porch, while the girls hand him tools they can barely carry. Every few minutes, one of them changes her mind about which screwdriver he should use. Julian thanks each of them as though they are master carpenters. The project takes twice as long because of all the interruptions. Neither Julian nor the girls seem to mind. Sylvia quietly walks onto the porch beside Tessa. "He's different." Tessa smiles. "He is. Do you trust him?" Tessa watches Julian laughing after Isla accidentally hands him a spoon instead of a screwdriver. Finally she answers, "Every day a little more." A few days later, Nora comes home upset after a disagreement with one of her classmates. She quietly sits on the back steps. Julian joins her without asking questions immediately. After several minutes, she says, "She said friends leave." Julian nods thoughtfully. "Sometimes they do." Nora looks down. "Does everybody leave?" Julian gently shakes his head. "The people who truly love you may make mistakes." He pauses. "But love isn't measured by whether someone has always been there." She looks at him. "Then how?" He smiles warmly. "By whether they keep showing up." Nora leans against his shoulder. She doesn't say another word. She doesn't need to. As autumn arrives, new traditions begin forming almost without anyone planning them. Friday nights become homemade pizza nights. Saturday mornings belong to pancake breakfasts. Sunday afternoons become family board game tournaments. Nobody keeps score for long because Isla keeps inventing new rules halfway through every game. Julian discovers that happiness often arrives disguised as completely ordinary moments. Flour scattered across a kitchen counter. Tiny fingerprints on freshly baked cookies. 3 sleepy goodnight hugs before bedtime. Years ago, he would have considered these interruptions. Now, he quietly treasures every one of them. One afternoon, Tessa asks Julian to close his eyes before stepping into the backyard. The girls giggle excitedly. "No peeking?" Julian laughs. "I'm trying." When they finally tell him to open his eyes, he sees the completed birdhouse standing beneath the old maple tree. Painted across the front are 5 handprints, 3 small, 2 larger. Above them, Nora has carefully written, Our family tree. Julian kneels beside it without speaking. His eyes fill with emotion. Clara quietly asks, "Do you like it?" Julian smiles through tears. "I don't think I've ever received a better gift." The girls immediately surround him with hugs. Tessa watches quietly from the porch. For the first time in years, her future feels brighter than her memories. Later that evening, after the girls fall asleep, Julian and Tessa sit together beneath the porch light. Neither says much. They simply enjoy the peaceful silence. After a while, Julian quietly speaks. "Can I ask you something?" She turns toward him. "Anything." He hesitates, not because he doubts his feelings, because he wants his words to matter. "Do you think people really get a second chance?" Tessa smiles thoughtfully. "Not everyone." He nods. "What about us?" She reaches over and gently takes his hand. "I don't think we're getting a second chance." Julian looks at her curiously. She smiles. "I think we're finally getting the chance we should have protected the first time." Neither rushes the moment. Both simply hold each other's hands as years of distance quietly disappear. The next morning, Julian receives a phone call from the chairman of the company's board. The board has unanimously approved his transition plan. His successor will officially take over within a month. Julian thanks him and ends the call. He quietly looks through the kitchen window. Outside, Nora, Clara, and Isla are chasing bubbles across the backyard while Tessa laughs beside them. For the first time in his adult life, he feels completely certain about the direction of his future. Then another thought enters his mind. There is still one promise he has never fulfilled, one question he has never asked again, one chapter of their story still waiting to be written. As he slips a small velvet box into his jacket pocket, only one question remains. Will Tessa believe in forever one more time? 1 month later, Julian officially hands over the leadership of his company. The transition ceremony is simple. No grand celebration, no dramatic farewell. He spends the morning thanking employees who stood beside him through years of challenges. Many are surprised by how peaceful he seems. One young manager approaches him before he leaves. "Mr. Cross, do you have any advice for someone hoping to build a career like yours?" Julian smiles. "Build your career." He pauses. "Just don't build it so high that the people you love can't reach you." The young manager quietly nods. Those words stay with him long after Julian walks away. News of Julian's resignation spreads quickly. Business reporters speculate endlessly. Some claim he is retiring early. Others believe he is secretly starting another company. Financial programs debate whether walking away is a mistake. During one interview, a reporter asks directly, "Mr. Cross, many people would give anything to have your position. Why leave now?" Julian answers calmly, "Because success isn't something you keep chasing forever." The reporter waits. Julian continues, "At some point you have to ask yourself who has been waiting while you were busy chasing it." The interview spreads across television and social media. Thousands discuss his answer. Only Julian knows it wasn't meant for the public. It was meant for himself. Without endless meetings filling every hour, Julian discovers how much life exists in ordinary days. He walks Nora to school every morning. He helps Clara practice multiplication tables after lunch. He sits on the living room floor while Isla creates elaborate adventures using stuffed animals and toy dinosaurs. One afternoon, Nora smiles and says, "You're getting really good at this." Julian laughs. "At what?" "Being around all the time." He smiles. "I'm still learning." She nods confidently. "You're doing great." The compliment means more than every business award hanging in his former office. One evening, after the girls fall asleep, Julian and Tessa sit together on the backyard swing. For a while, they simply enjoy the peaceful evening. Finally, Julian breaks the silence. "Do you ever wonder what life would have looked like if we talked one more time?" Tessa smiles thoughtfully. "Sometimes." He looks down. "I do too." She gently reaches for his hand. "We can't change those years." Julian nods. "No." She smiles warmly. "But we've been given today." He looks at her. "And tomorrow." She squeezes his hand. "That's enough for me." For Julian, it becomes enough for him too. A week later, the family returns to the small lakeside park where Julian and Tessa shared their very first date years earlier. While pretending not to notice Julian looking unusually nervous, Tessa smiles. "You're awfully quiet today." Julian laughs softly. "I've been practicing something." "Practicing?" He reaches into his jacket pocket. Instead of immediately taking out a ring, he removes the tiny silver key to their first apartment. Tessa's eyes immediately recognize it. "You still kept it." Julian nods. "It reminded me where our story began." He gently places the key in her hand. Then he kneels. This time there are no expensive decorations, no audience, no photographers, only the people who matter most. He opens the small velvet box. Years ago, I promised to give you the perfect future. He smiles. Now I know perfect doesn't exist. Tessa's eyes fill with tears. Julian continues. But if you'll let me, I'd love the chance to keep building an honest one with you. He looks directly into her eyes. Tessa, will you marry me again? Tessa doesn't answer immediately. She wipes away a happy tear before smiling. You know, Julian waits nervously. You never were very patient. He laughs. I'm trying. She gently takes the ring. Then here's your reward for trying. She slips it onto her finger. Yes. Julian smiles wider than he has in years. Really? She laughs through tears. Really? Before either of them can say another word, 3 excited voices interrupt. She said yes. The girls come running toward them. Apparently they had been watching the entire proposal from behind a nearby tree with Graham and Sylvia. Everyone bursts into laughter. Isla proudly announces, I knew she'd say yes. Clara folds her arms. You guessed. Still counts. Nora hugs both Julian and Tessa. Does this mean we're all staying together? Julian kneels beside the girls. If that's what all of you want. 3 enthusiastic voices answer at once. Yes! Graham quietly wipes away a tear. Beatrice smiles beside him. I always believed they'd find their way back. Graham nods. Sometimes people need time to become the version of themselves they were always meant to be. Wedding plans begin, but unlike their first wedding, everything feels wonderfully simple. Instead of worrying about elegant venues or impressive guest lists, they focus on what matters. The girls insist on helping choose flowers. Isla wants rainbow-colored cupcakes. Clara carefully designs handmade invitations. Nora volunteers to write a special reading for the ceremony. Every decision reflects joy instead of pressure. One evening, Julian quietly tells Tessa, I think this wedding already feels different. She smiles, because this time we're not trying to impress anyone. He nods. We're simply celebrating the family we've become. The morning of the wedding finally arrives. Julian stands alone in a quiet room adjusting his tie. A gentle knock comes at the door. When he opens it, he finds Nora standing there holding a neatly folded piece of paper. Mom asked me to give this to you before the ceremony. Julian unfolds the note. In Tessa's handwriting it reads, Thank you for finding your way home. He smiles as emotion fills his eyes. Outside, music begins. Family and friends take their seats. The girls wait excitedly for the ceremony to begin. In just a few moments, 2 people who once believed they had lost everything will stand together once again, not to erase the past, but to honor everything they learned because of it. Will this wedding finally bring their remarkable journey full circle? The ceremony is held in the garden of the same community church where Julian and Tessa were married years earlier. This time, everything feels different. There are no extravagant decorations, no television cameras, no business associates attending out of obligation. Instead, every chair is filled with people who genuinely love them. Julian stands quietly beneath a flower-covered arch. He isn't thinking about the vows he memorized. He's thinking about the journey that brought him back here. Then the music begins. Everyone rises. Tessa appears, walking slowly down the aisle with Graham by her side. She isn't the same woman Julian married years ago. She's stronger, wiser, more confident. Julian realizes something beautiful. He isn't falling in love with the woman he remembers. He's falling in love with the woman standing before him today. Before Tessa reaches the altar, the triplets proudly begin their important jobs. Clara carefully scatters flower petals, stopping every few steps to make sure none are left behind. Isla waves happily at nearly every guest instead of walking in a straight line. Laughter spreads throughout the garden. Nora carries the wedding rings with complete determination. When she reaches Julian, she whispers, I practiced this all week. Julian smiles. I can tell. The girls take their seats in the front row, unable to stop smiling. For them, this isn't simply a wedding. It's the day their family becomes whole. The officiant welcomes everyone before inviting Julian and Tessa to share their own vows. Julian goes first. He doesn't unfold a prepared speech. Instead, he simply speaks from the heart. Years ago, I promised to give you everything. He smiles gently. I thought that meant success. He looks at Tessa. Now I understand that the greatest gift I can give you is my time, my attention, my honesty, and my presence. He pauses. I promise never to let silence replace conversation again. Tessa smiles through happy tears. When it's her turn, she quietly says, I spent years wishing we could go back. She gently shakes her head. Today I don't want to go backward. She reaches for Julian's hands. I want to keep moving forward together. Neither promise sounds perfect. That's exactly why they feel real. As the ceremony continues, Julian glances toward the front row. Beatrice sits beside Graham and Sylvia. She notices her son looking at her. She smiles proudly. After the ceremony, Julian walks over and gently hugs his mother. She whispers, "I knew one day you'd understand." Julian smiles. "You tried telling me years ago." She laughs softly. Children don't always listen the first time. He kisses her forehead. "I'm listening now." For Beatrice, no wedding gift could ever compare to seeing her son's heart finally at peace. The celebration takes place beneath strings of warm lights in the church courtyard. Children play nearby while families share stories around simple wooden tables. Instead of formal speeches, everyone shares favorite memories. Graham remembers the first time Julian nervously visited their home years ago. Sylvia laughs about Tessa burning nearly every recipe during their first year of marriage. Even Julian joins the laughter. The girls organize an enthusiastic dance competition. They insist Julian participate. He quickly discovers he has absolutely no rhythm. The girls laugh until their cheeks hurt. Julian laughs even harder. For years he believed joy had to be earned through achievement. Now he discovers it often appears during wonderfully imperfect moments. Several months later, life settles into a comfortable rhythm. Julian no longer measures his days by contracts signed or meetings completed. Instead, he measures them differently. Morning hugs before school, family dinners where everyone shares the best part of the day, helping with homework, weekend bike rides, movie nights where someone always falls asleep before the ending. One afternoon, Nora asks, "Dad?" Julian smiles every time she says that word. "Yes?" She thinks carefully before speaking. "Do you miss your old job?" Julian looks around the backyard. Clara is painting another birdhouse. Mila is chasing bubbles. Tessa is tending flowers near the porch. He smiles. "Not for a single minute." Nora grins. "Good." One evening, Julian finds the old family photograph that once stayed hidden inside his office drawer. He places it beside a brand new picture taken after the wedding. The first photograph reminds him of what was lost. The second reminds him of what was found. He quietly slips the older picture into a family album instead of hiding it away again. Not because he wants to forget the past, because the past helped shape the people they became. Tessa quietly walks beside him. She notices the photographs. "You finally put it where it belongs." Julian nods. "So did we." Hurry. Phones stay tucked away. Conversations wander from school projects to vacation ideas to whether Isla's pet goldfish looks lonely. The room fills with laughter. Julian looks around the table. Years earlier, he believed a successful life meant having more. Today, he understands something much simpler. A meaningful life is built by sharing ordinary days with the people who matter most. The lesson doesn't arrive through a speech. It quietly lives inside the family they almost never became. As the sun begins to set, the girls race into the backyard while Julian and Tessa watch from the porch. Without warning, all three turn around and run back toward them. Group hugs have become a family tradition. Nobody questions them anymore. Julian wraps his arms around everyone he loves. He quietly smiles. Not because life became perfect, because they chose each other every single day. Sometimes the greatest blessings don't arrive when life goes according to plan. Sometimes they arrive after forgiveness, honest conversations, and the courage to begin again. If this story touched your heart, share the moment that stayed with you the most in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoy heartfelt stories about love, family, hope, and second chances, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Mr. Williams Storytime, and turn on notifications so you never miss another unforgettable journey. Until next time, take care of the people who matter while you still have the chance. The end.